Sarah has an unholy grip on me, and I'm okay with it. Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reading Heir of Fire by Sarah J Maas. It has been one day since I posted my Crown of Midnight reading vlog, and the bitch pulled me back in again. That last book was just sort of mediocre for me, and I was just missing some characters that I had become familiar with in my first read of the series. For reference, I read up to Empire of Storms last time I attempted to read this series, and I didn't get past Empire of Storms, so I kind of have some like reference and context for the characters, right? And I was missing Rowan, I was missing Aelin's cousin. Is it Aedion? Is that how you say it? I was missing him as well. And already in these first 38 pages, we're getting both of those beloved characters. Thank you, Sarah. I am so pleased. Let me break down for you on what I've read so far and what we're doing today, because I'm going to take you along with me as I read this book. I don't think it's going to be a 24-hour vlog. Realistically, I also have to read Circe by Madeline Miller for another video, which I know is going to take me a while to get through. It's going to be a read as I can sort of vlog. In these first 38 pages, she's really done that. She's really given me everything that I needed and more. We open up with Celaena or Aelin or whoever the fuck in Wendland. She has been sent to this continent or country. Celaena is not super pleased that she's there. She ends up seeing someone that is semi-related to her, I think, like a cousin or something like that. He is the prince of the throne here. She sees how much everybody in this country loves this prince, how beloved he is, and she's like, you know what? I know I was kind of sent to kill him and like bring back information for the king of Adarlan, but I don't want to do that. And she's still very much in her Nehemia just died depression. So she's just vibing. She's like hot and sweaty all the time. She smells really bad and she's kind of drunk right now. You know, going through it, generally speaking, until she's greeted in an alleyway by none other than Rowan, and he says he's going to take her somewhere. I think maybe to Queen Maeve. I am not entirely sure where he's taking her at this point. I just know that they were on horses and now they're chilling in a forest, and that's kind of it. I will say Sarah does a really good job at giving us a little hint of something and then like kind of making us read other people's POV in between, so we know that she's like going off with Rowan, and then we get a Chaol chapter and a Manon chapter, and then we finally get back to the good stuff. We do get to see Chaol and Dorian. I will say I was not super excited for their POV at the beginning because I don't care about them. I think they're boring. But we have Aedion in the court of Adarlan. I definitely forgot that he was like the general for the king of Adarlan. It's interesting to see how different his character is in this book compared to what he becomes. I feel like he's such a softie, and in this book he's like the womanizing, like stone cold, like villain, not villain, but like, you know, war general. Yeah, his introduction's interesting. Seeing how Chaol and Dorian like feel about him is very interesting. I want to see what he's going to do next. But I liked his introduction definitely in this book, and I like that that is what Chaol and Dorian's chapter is spent on, because honestly, if it was just them in their heads, I think I would have been bored out of my skull. So I'm glad about that. And then we get Manon's lovely chapter. Another one that I can appreciate more now that I have read the majority of the books in the series. Getting to see how much she has changed is also interesting. So we get to see is in this town or this village, and she's kind of like posing as a Croshawn witch so that she can kill or like suss out the Croshawn witch that's supposed to be in this little village. She's been living there for a little while. I think all of her sisters are living in different villages and trying to like kill the last of the Croshawn witches, and she has not been able to like find any. Like they're pretty much all dead at this point, and we get to see her using her iron claws on a man, and it's just delightful. It's a fucking delight. I am only on chapter 6, and it looks like the king of Adarlan is going to be eating roast chicken, so I'm sure that's going to be exciting. God, I'm ready to start caring about Dorian again. I don't think I'll ever care about Chaol again from this point, even when I have to read Tower of Dawn. Dorian I can get behind, especially a certain ship that comes along down the lane, down the road. It is like 4 o'clock. Got some work I gotta do. After that, I'm planning on going to my friend Trader Joe's. I really want a baguette. Like, Hayden's not gonna be here today. He has band practice tonight, and a bitch wants some bread and oil, and maybe some cheese too. You know, thriving. I will maybe do a Trader Joe's haul if I end up going, and I'll update you on this book as I read. Okay, so it's been a second since we last spoke, as evidenced by my new outfit, which kind of makes me look like Arthur the motherfucking Aardvark. I'm 89 pages into Heir of Fire, and this is all I want to read right now. I'm shocked. I'm surprised. Not really that surprised. I knew this book was going to be better than the other ones in the series, or the other books up until this point. So, since we last spoke, Celaena is finally getting her quest and or mission for this book, and I like that early on we are kind of finding out what that is. So, Celaena does end up meeting with Queen Maeve and Rowan at the same time. Maeve says, hey, I will definitely answer all of your questions about the word keys, which is like really what Celaena's after, kind of. I mean, I'll be honest, in this book, she's not super direction filled at the beginning, but she does want to find out more about the word keys. So whenever Queen Maeve says like, hey, I will do this for you, Celaena's kind of like wondering what the catch is, and she finds out that the catch is that she needs to learn how to use her Fae abilities. We find out that Celaena is half Fae in the last book, and we know that if she wants to get into Doranel, which is like where all of the, is it Doranel or Dorandel? I honestly can't remember. If she wants to get into this place, the city that is full of Fae, she has to kind of prove herself, and in the keep, I guess you could say, or like the border town, I guess, to Doranel, she is hanging out with a bunch of like half Fae who are trying to train to prove themselves or have kind of given up their hopes of training. And so she's gonna have to chill here and learn how to wield her abilities if she wants to get this information. And Queen Maeve basically implies that like she's kind of useless unless she gets these skills, and that she can save her people, which is kind of what everyone has been telling her, like, girl, you have a fucking mission, you need to stick to it. And I don't know why it's not going through her skull at this point, but I'm kind of understanding in this book, right? Like, she's depressed. Anyway, we've also had a lot of interactions with Rowan, which, I mean, I'm not mad at. The interaction that they have very early on where he straight up punches her in the face, I didn't hate. I thought it was like kind of fun. I'm not saying that I condone that in a romantic context or really in any context. I don't think violence is the answer, but in a fantasy setting in this book, I thought it was fucking funny. He punches her in the face and she's like, do it again. I know you want to. And he's like, I'm not going to give you what you want, but also you're being like kind of the worst. And then he tells her that she's going to have to also kind of be like a scullery maid and or like work in the kitchens of the place that they're staying while she's training with Rowan to be able to get into the Fae City. So kind of fun, kind of zesty. I like that she has her mission now. I do remember liking the training sequences in this book, which I think is interesting because I'm normally not into that sort of thing, but I'm into this. I say that. I think I'm into like training sequences in fantasy, or at least kind of, depending on the book. Like, I have not hated them in the Sarah J Maas books. There's some other books that are like coming into my brain that I can't remember the titles of that also kind of have training, and it doesn't bug me. So anyway, loving that. We also have some hints that Adian might be up to some fuck shit, like in the best way. I know in the last clip I said Adion, but it's apparently Adian. Kind of like Hayden, like Adian. Okay. Anyway, that's how I'm conceptualizing it. He is kind of like up to no good a little bit. I'm loving it, kind of into it. I honestly can't remember why he is doing what he's doing, but he ends up sneaking out of the castle, and the only way that Chaol really knows this is that 2 of his guards are missing. He finds out from the guards that are stationed at the place they're supposed to be stationed at that there's like a party going on at this inn, and so Chaol shows up and he can't even find Adian. Apparently he like went off with a woman, and we're like, did he really though? We're also wondering like what he's up to, just generally speaking, because I don't want to say he's sus, but like there's something definitely going on there. We definitely know in our heart of hearts, maybe, I don't know if we know this. I think I know this because I've read the series before, that the reason he does the things he does is because he loves his country so much, and he's only working with the King of Adarlan to like bring him down from the inside. So loving that, loving that Chaol and Dorian's storyline is really just about Adian at this point. Like, love to see it. And then we also have Manon, who has been promised a wyvern, and I'm hyped for that too. I forgot how much I loved the wyverns. So essentially all of the, is it Blackbeak witches, are going to come together, and they're all going to ride some wyverns because magic's pretty much gone and aging, and they can't use their magic, whatever. And this is the way that they're going to be able to fly again. So they're going to be zoom in on some fucking wyverns. Very hyped, very excited. I feel like things are coming together. It's so interesting to me what a marked difference this book is from the last book. I just keep reading, and there's so much intentionality put into, in my opinion, the chapters and the way that they're laid out. The switches in POV I think is fascinating. I don't feel like the POV switches were that great in the last book. Not that they were like not seamless per se, but the fact that it was basically just Celaena and Chaol with a little bit of Dorian wasn't really it for me. This feels a little bit more well-rounded, and I mean, Manon is just like arguably one of Sarah J Maas's best characters, so loving that direction of things. I'm going to continue to read, and I will give you more like as I go sort of thoughts, because I'm hoping to read a lot of this tonight. As much as I love giving these little summaries, I want to be able to give like my raw thoughts, so I'm gonna do that. I am gonna go get in something more comfortable though. I kind of forgot about Dorian's love interest in this book, but I didn't realize like how creepy she is, and I can't remember if she like turns out to be creepy. I like do know that she dies. I just don't remember her being creepy. She's like, I've always had a thing for this man, and I'm like, the bland flavorless one with no personality? Girl. Basically there's like a healer, she likes him. There's nothing special there, and I know that like their relationship is sort of forbidden, but honestly who cares? Hello, season's greetings. It's been about 3 weeks since I last last picked up Heir of Fire, but I'm ready to get back on the proverbial horse and tell you how I'm feeling about this book and how much further I've gotten. The latter of which is not very far, is the answer. I have not gotten very much further in this book. Since we last spoke, Aedion and Chaol have had their little altercation, kind of. We find out that Aedion is not really working for the King of Adarlan, which, like, you know, we kind of knew that. Like, we kind of guessed. He's probs not doing that. And we figure out pretty quickly that he is working with the same, like, group of rebels that I want to say Archer, was that his name? Whatever dude, like, died at the end of the last book for being kind of like a traitor. Aedion is working with those people. He is kind of a rebel, I guess you could say, in leagues with the rebels because he doesn't like the king and he's just trying to protect his people. And he's also under the assumption that his cousin, Aelin, is deceased. You know, he had heard rumors, he'd heard stirrings of, like, Aelin being alive, and then when he had personally investigated that claim, he couldn't find any proof that it was true. And Chaol kind of, like, plays on this after he is kind of captured by Aedion and some of the rebels. He's, like, trying to find Aedion and, like, figure out what he's up to since he wasn't actually at this, like, grand party that he had been told by his guards that Aedion was at. So he ends up getting captured or kidnapped or whatever you want to say for following Aedion in that process and, like, I guess in hopes of saving himself from being murdered. He basically tells Aedion, hey, your cousin's alive. Aedion's like, excuse me? And he's also upset when he learns that Aelin/Celaena has been sent to Wendlyn. Also had some, like, other developments. Dorian and his, like, healer lady girlfriend have had some, like, more interactions. He had a magical moment with her. Not, like, innuendo sexual magical moment. I mean, like, he showed his magic to her kind of unwittingly. Now he feels weird about it and she's like, ooh, she has a secret about her, like, no secrets about him, whatever. And then we also have Celaena, wow, or Aelin. What are we gonna call her? What are we feeling like calling her? Bitch with 3 different names. She is still training, getting just beat to shit by Rowan, who honestly is kind of growing on me. He's always, in my opinion, been, like, the weakest of the Sarah J. Maas heroes, but there's something about his, like, cruelty that I'm sort of digging. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Rhys. I think he's great. I understand why he is, like, the hero of the Sarah J. Maas heroes. Like, I get it. I like him too. He's great. But I think there is something to be said for a true, like, not even enemies to lovers, but, like, I think you're a piece of shit to lovers story. I don't know. He really, like, has something against Celaena or Aelin personally. Just the way he treats her while training her is a lot to handle, but I think it makes the transformation from, like, kind of hatred to loving each other just that much sweeter, just that much more interesting, and I'm excited to see it happen. I can't remember, I don't remember it being quite this intense, I guess, the first time around. I felt like the characters were a little flat and I didn't love their relationship together, but I'm liking the interaction that we're having that has, like, no sexuality or, like, sexual undertones from the beginning. Like, I think it'll be more interesting that way. Am I crazy? I don't know. I'm liking it. And I contrast that, obviously, with the Farah-Rhys relationship. Like, we do kind of think he's a bad guy in the book series, but, like, I still don't feel like he really, towards Farah, treated her poorly. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, he paraded her around or whatever, and, like, I don't know. I just don't feel like he treated her that roughly. But Celaena Aelin has a black eye from this man, and in this last scene, he, like, bites her and pinches her tongue, and I liked it. Okay? I'm gonna say it. I liked it. I thought it was great. Live, laugh, loving a lot. And now I'm starting in on chapter 21, where Rowan is grinning after biting her on the neck. There you are. Blood, her blood, was on his teeth, on his mouth and chin. Those dead eyes glowed as he spat her blood onto the earth. Just delightful. Okay, it's been a while, but I am farther into this book, so I figured we could talk about it. I'm also trying to finish it tonight, so hopefully that happens. Since we last spoke, a lot has happened and also not a lot has happened. The interesting stuff happened, like, right after I talked to you, and now things are a little bit boring. I guess the biggest and most interesting thing that's happened is that Manon has finally gotten her wyvern. I think it was the chapter right after I spoke to you last where she ends up getting her wyvern. It was such a nice change of pace and refreshing thing in the midst of this book because I was getting a little bit bored, I'm not gonna lie, and getting to see Manon, like, have her mount and finally get Abraxos was really delightful. And I couldn't really remember the origin story. I could kind of remember that Abraxos was, like, the underdog, kind of. Getting to actually see that play out was pretty fun. I liked that part of the story. Am I liking any of the things that are happening right now? Not so much. The part that I just paused, or the part that I, like, left off on, we have Rowan and Aelin/Celaena finally having some sort of, like, truce or pact, which, like, do we love it? No, not really. I like the idea of a pact and a truce, but I think it's more interesting to have them kind of up in arms, and I think like maybe this sort of like begrudging friendship is what I'm not loving, and like maybe that'll become interesting at some point, but it's not really interesting right now. Rowan kind of sharing his backstory about how his wife ended up getting murdered because he left her at home when he was trying to be too proud, I guess, and like be too courageous and go to war. I think that's why he was gone. I can't exactly remember, but his wife ended up dying, his mate, and so that's why he's got his panties in a wad and is so mean to Celaena. And Celaena kind of shares why she is traumatized with her whole my friend just got murdered in cold blood by this really evil guy thing. So they kind of come to some sort of understanding. It's good that they do because other things have happened in the background. We have this sort of like mystery that's going on because people keep winding up dead, and at first we're like, ooh, it's the skinwalkers who've been killing these people, but actually we don't know what is killing these people. Is it some sort of monster from a different realm? We don't know, but we know that Rowan and Celaena are trying to figure out what's happening. And then we also have Celaena finally figuring out her powers. She is using her fire, but is not exactly in control of it yet. So that's kind of a plot line. And then we have the other plot lines, which couldn't be less interesting. Like Manon stuff is kind of interesting, or at least like the Wyvern stuff was. Caring a little bit less, although I am intrigued by the fact that she tried to like eat some meat or something. Like Abraxas tried to eat some meat, he wasn't into it. She also wasn't into it, and she's like, okay, what dastardly things are going on here? I don't know, but I'm trying to figure it out. And I think she's gonna kind of unveil some sort of like truths about the King of Adarlan and his cronies, which is interesting. But the other stuff is not so interesting. I don't really care that much now that she has a Wyvern about like them training and like her being the head bitch. I don't care about that. And I also really don't care about Dorian and Chaol. Holy shit. I don't care about them. I don't care about their side plots. I especially don't care about Dorian trying to hide his powers from his dad. Like, I understand that he is a character that exists. I understand that I'm supposed to care, but I just don't care about him. I seem to remember the first time I read the series that I like was kind of invested in him, and I felt like I just wanted to give him a hug, and now I just don't want to hear about him. Maybe it's because I knew about him the first time and now I'm good. Like, I'm very good. I don't want to reread your story. Chaol, I don't even want to go into his shit. Aedion, I think, is kind of interesting. He is finally getting to see where Celaena used to live and see kind of like parts of her life by chilling at her apartment, I guess, and going into the keep where, you know, Arobynn is, although he's not going to kill Arobynn. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I'm just like throwing words out here and just trying to like hope you catch it because my battery's about to die, but that's where I'm at. And is it thrilling? No. Is it gonna pick up? We'll see. By some miracle, I finished it. That miracle honestly was the audiobook that I decided to use an Audible credit on. So much happened in the last part of this book that I definitely regret not updating you as I went along, because now that I'm trying to think about all of the plot points that happened from the last time I talked to you till now, ooh, it's gonna be a doozy. I'm gonna try to do my best to describe what happened and then also tell you my thoughts on it, as one does in a vlog. Okay, so I think the last time we spoke, things were just starting to gear up. We knew that there were some demi-fae that were being murdered, but we didn't know who was doing it. We didn't know if it was a person, if it was some sort of creature, but we find out pretty quickly, well, fairly quickly, the thing that has been murdering these demi-fae are the Valg, I don't know how to say it, but they have been traveling from a different world to come and murder demi-fae, and I don't really know what their purpose is, but we do know that they are the ones that created the word keys, and the word keys, I think, open word gates, which is what lets in demon creatures. But also, if you have these word keys, you're just going to be super powerful. So Celaena decides that she needs to find these. That's like part of the whole story. That's what she is trying to glean from Maeve. There's a big battle between Celaena and Rowan and the Valg, and they become triumphant. And during this sort of like triumphant period, there are, you know, some underdog moments. And during one of those underdog moments where Celaena is kind of fighting for her life, we end up seeing flashbacks to other times when she's had to fight for her life. Like whenever she was running from some people who were trying to kill her family. We get to kind of see her backstory, and I think this sort of like fuels her power and fuels her mind in this final like fight that she's in with the Valg. She ends up winning, obviously, and now we know more about her, which I guess is fun. And additionally, Celaena has gained some support from, I guess, other people, or people now know about her and her abilities, and they know that Aelin Galathinius is like back and better than ever, and that information is spread to Adarlan, which is kind of a problem because the King of Adarlan is not too happy about this. Oh, also, I don't think I mentioned, but like part of the bad shit that was happening around the same time as the Valg was that a lot of the people in the mines ended up being murdered because they were trying to have some sort of like slave uprising and slave rebellion, and so the King of Adarlan ends up killing everybody. So he's a piece of shit. We kind of knew that. We knew that was happening. And whenever he finds out not only that this uprising was happening, but also that Aelin Galathinius is not actually dead, that there was kind of an uprising, not an uprising, but like, I don't know, she has great powers and everybody knows about her great powers, kind of, he's pretty upset. He ends up taking this out on Dorian and Dorian Slampies. Oh my god, are we so surprised? So Dorian Slampies ends up being murdered because she was spying or something. No one really cares about her or her backstory, but she ends up being murdered, and when this happens, Dorian has this outburst of magic. The king is like, oh my god, yay, I can finally use you the way you're supposed to be used, and puts a collar on him that's made out of, I think, the same stuff that the word keys are made out of, some sort of like obsidian, and now, unfortunately, Dorian is going to be under the thrall of the king of Adarlan. Chaol is able to escape because of the magic that ended up happening, and Aedion is imprisoned, but is going to be freed by Chaol, hopefully. And then we have Celaena coming back to Adarlan. She's not back yet, she's on a boat, she's heading there, and she's ready to like sew things up with Chaol and fight King of Adarlan for her country. That was a really shit description, but that's what happened. I don't know. I enjoyed listening to this book. I will say I don't think the audiobook listening experience is really what I wanted for this series. It just definitely changed my experience, and not in a bad way, but I also don't feel like I was as invested as I could have been had I read this physically, at least the last part of the book. I think the first time I read this, I gave it 4 stars. I think this time it's kind of a 3-star read for me. I was interested in what happened. I feel like this book definitely moves the plot forward and is the sort of like starting point for the goodness of this series, right? It's like the first book that kind of marks like, this might be interesting, but I don't think it did as much as I initially thought it had done. If that makes any sense. Like when I initially read this book, I was like so into it. And I guess now, knowing the characters and knowing some of the other fun things that happen in the series, I just keep waiting for those moments to happen. Like I miss Lysandra, I miss some of the characters we haven't even been introduced to yet. So I don't know, I liked this book, but it was lacking in some ways. And I feel like the romantic relationship between Rowan and Celaena didn't exactly go as far as I wanted it to, which makes sense. I mean, it is a book series that's quite long. I think is this the 3rd book? There's definitely time for that development or whatever, but I just wanted something else there. It seemed like they went too suddenly from hating each other to like being kind of like besties, like platonic besties. I don't know. It just didn't totally work for me. And then I think I didn't love, I think I've said it about a million times, the Dorian and the Chaol and the Aedion storyline. Like I love Aedion, I think he's awesome, but I just don't feel like he was done any justice in this story. I wanted more from his point of view. And I know we get it later on in the series, so like I'm not super upset about it. But like, it just wasn't as interesting as I wanted it to be. Just generally speaking, I think that is the theme of this book. It's like, was it a fun time? Sure. Did this also take me 3 months to read? Yes. I went back and looked at like the first clip that I filmed for this vlog was the last week of January, and it is like the 2nd week of April. So yeah, I don't know, like fun, sure. Best book ever? No. Am I very excited for the 4th book that I know that I adore? Very much so, yes. When I will read that, I don't know. Probably sometime in May, which is, how is it already almost May? Jesus Christ. That's it. That's my review of this book. Thanks for sticking around if you watched this entire thing. I know that these are not the most popular videos for probably good reason, because I'm not very good at like just talking about a book for an entire video. One single book for a video. But if you did stick around this entire time, thanks so much. Love you so much. And until next Sunday.